Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the morning meeting. Thank you for coming. We wondered overnight, what could we do to match yesterday's episode where the two-way community was the first to learn of the departure of Mike Lawler from the National Security Council team? We've come up with three things. One, it's the television hosting debut of the gentleman from New York, Congressman Mike Lawler, sitting in for Sean today. Very excited, Congressman, to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Number two, it's the debut of the two-way merch. More on that in a moment or later. And number three, expect a surprise. Can't say what it is yet, but we'll be able to match yesterday's show. I'm quite confident. I'll run through the day book, then we'll kick things around. And then, as always, we'd love your questions and comments. Please, if you want to be part of the conversation and you're here on the two-way platform, raise your electronic hand. If you're watching live on X or YouTube, don't raise your hand. Don't put smack in the chat. The congressman will set a sterling example for peace, love, and understanding, and the presumption of grace for all. And you should too. And by the way, if you're watching this video on demand, definitely don't raise your hand because the chances we call on you then are, as my friend Britt Hume would say, de minimis. So, Congressman, just before I run through the day book, did you grow up in a household that watched television news much?
We did, but
Yeah.
not more so sports.
Yeah. Were you a Dan Rather family, Peter Jennings, Tom Brokaw?
I would say probably Tom Brokaw.
Tom Brokaw. You're a brilliant mimic, I know. Do you do a Brokaw?
I do not actually.
Do not. All right. Well, think about it. I bet you could.
I got to work on that.
All right. Anyway, very grateful to have the congressman here, and we'll get to him and Dan in just a moment. The president today starts out. He did his speech in Alabama last night. It got surprisingly little coverage. It was a phenomenal Trump what do you call it? Commencement address. But then he flew to Florida, which is where he is today. And he's just got one event, closed press, participating in the RNC Spring Gala. Will raise a lot of money, 7:30. So in theory, we won't see the president today, but I bet we will. More on that perhaps later. Don't know what the vice president's doing today. The job numbers came out at 8:30, and they were, as we say on CNBC, better than expected. Never understood why so much economic coverage is based on what the expectations of some analysts were. But payroll growth was robust, 177,000 new jobs in April, topping expectations. Unemployment stayed the same. I'm sure there'll be a lot more analysis, but you can be sure that this will be a comfort to the White House, and no one's going to be able to cast this as some sort of disaster in terms of tariffs. We'll talk about tariffs in a moment. The House and Senate are out, which is, I guess, part of why we're lucky enough to have the congressman with us. Not much else going on, at least that we know. This weekend, besides the NBA playoffs, go Knicks. Although I'm a Celtics fan, I appreciate having a good team here in New York for once.
No one's perfect.
On Sunday, the president's doing an interview with Kristen Welker on Meet the Press. We can't figure out yet if that's live or not or recorded, but he's doing an interview on Meet the Press. And on Sunday, Caitlin Clark and the Indiana, what is the name of the Indiana team? What is it?
Indiana Fever.
The Indiana Fever. I love pro sports teams that don't end in S. The Indiana Fever are playing like the Brazilians or somebody. I don't know. She's playing in Iowa this weekend on Sunday. It's going to be massive if you care about Iowa culture. It's a massive thing. All right. Probably obviously biggest news yesterday for us when we broke the story here, Congressman, was the departure of the National Security Advisor going, if he's confirmed, to the UN. Marco Rubio is becoming Kissagerian. Is that how you pronounce that? Kissagerian, to take, at least temporarily, both keep the State Department job and a National Security Advisor. Congressman, what does this mean about the state of the national security apparatus that he's getting both jobs? Does it say something about Marco Rubio? Does it say something about no one wants it? Too many people want it? What does it mean that he's got both jobs?
Well, I think, number one, it says that the president has confidence in Secretary of State Rubio and his ability to do the job. I think, obviously, the Secretary of State is extremely well-versed in these issues. These matters, and certainly I would say one of the most articulate spokespeople within the administration. And so I think obviously in the immediate, he certainly is a good fit. We'll see how long that lasts. Obviously, he's wearing multiple hats at the moment.
Yeah,
as some of the memes have exploded on X and other social media outlets. But I think, obviously it was somewhat surprising day in terms of obviously the news you broke and then where it ended up with Mike Waltz going to the UN. So
If the president asked you for a recommendation for the job, is there someone top of mind for you who you think you'd be good at it?
not at the moment. I think obviously the president has to be comfortable with the individual who's going to be, providing them with the greatest level of detail and advice as to what's going on around the globe and involved in every aspect of these decisions. So, we'll see how the president, decide what he decides in the coming weeks. But I think in the immediate, obviously, Marco Rubio, fills that void.
One more for you, and then I want to get Dan global response to it. But I thought Waltz was an incredible pick, and his resume, it just couldn't have been more perfect. Did he fail because he'd been a member of the House, and those people are just not very good? No, but I'm serious. Like, what's the lesson to you? Why wouldn't that guy have been a superstar in this job?
Look, Mike Waltz is phenomenal. He's a great friend. He was a tremendous member of the House. Obviously, his pedigree and background is very strong.
Yeah. So why didn't it work out?
Look, I think obviously we've seen some of the reporting. Obviously, the president was very upset with what happened with Signalgate. I'm not necessarily surprised, though. I do feel bad for Mike. I think he was great for that role, and I think from the standpoint of the operations that have thus far taken place, they've done a very good job. They've done a very good job getting hostages released, and there's still more work to be done there, obviously. But they've done a very good job, I think, across the board. But, unfortunately, sometimes, situations arise and personalities may conflict. But I think Mike certainly has a bright future ahead of him and will do well at the United Nations.
No reason to feel bad for him because according to the vice president, this was a promotion. Dan, what's your view of the meaning of Marco Rubio, at least temporarily, wearing both of these hats, which, again, Kissinger did, but it's a little unorthodox. It could be part of Doge. We eliminated a job, head count by one. But what's your view of all this, Dan?
As you say, in normal times, this would be pretty shocking because only Henry Kissinger has done it. And he is, I think, in a stratosphere all to himself. But I think in Trump's White House, titles are somewhat meaningless. I mean, Steve Witkoff kind of has, I don't know, half the portfolio. And I say that in all seriousness. And Trump seems comfortable kind of dividing, up responsibilities with different people. And as the congressman said, he clearly likes Marco Rubio. He trusts his judgment. And so, you've said it, Mark. Rubio doesn't want to travel as much as a normal Secretary of State. He's got young children. And this allows him to kind of continue to provide his thoughts and counsel to the president, and where necessary, continue to be Secretary of State, along with Steve Witkoff and some others.
Let me advance my reporting a little bit from what I've previously told you from my sources. First of all, I reported yesterday, this guy, Christopher Landau, very well thought of guy, is the deputy at State. Some people wanted him to become the national security advisor in the wake of the departure of Waltz. Rubio said, no, this guy's too good. I need him at State. I believe, my sense is they're both going to do both jobs to some extent. And so this gets Landau. It eliminates a little bit of the pain of the job lock to be able to allow him to be in the White House. It's just an incredibly influential position, in part because, particularly in this White House, because you're in the White House. And Foggy Bottom, mile away, but it might as well be a million miles away because the way Donald Trump operates. Rubio getting the job certainly reflects how well thought of he is by Susie Wiles, by the president, by the vice president, but it also reflects factional disputes I'm told, about who might get the job instead. There's people who would like Mr. Witkoff to get it. Mr. Witkoff says he doesn't want it. I'm not so sure that's true. Sometimes if you can't get a job, you say you don't want it. And then Rick Grinnell, our friend Rick Grinnell, who's also guest host of this program. There's some people who'd love Rick Grinnell in that job, but there's some people who would not. And some very senior people, I'm told, who don't necessarily favor that. So I think the original plan was to not make this announcement until there was a decision about who would take it and get it. And maybe that timetable got disrupted a bit, but it's going to be interesting to see, obviously, how long he stays in the job. All right, tariffs. If you look at the macro of both United States and China, United States and Europe, United States and Asia, and the macro of how this is all affecting American consumers, the current news cycle has good news and bad news. On the China front, China said today they're open to starting to talk. They made much more conciliatory comments about the prospect of conversations with the United States, and there are reports that I believe are accurate that there have now been confirmed by both sides low-level talks about how to proceed. On the other hand, the U.S. Exemption of tariffs on lower-priced products expired, and so there's more tariffs in place. There's also continue to be reports of people, small business owners and consumers being already affected by the tariffs. Gavin Newsom was on Next Up with me yesterday and said the major ports in LA are really down in terms of the amount of business they expect next week. The Europeans are making nicer noises about talks as well. And then we got the jobs numbers, which obviously provides some relief for the administration in terms of the mood music of, is the economy in free fall? And the markets have been doing pretty well for all this week. So Dan, where are we as the week ends, do you think, on tariffs being something the administration is under a lot of pressure to resolve, or they can stay the course, go for bilateral deals, ramp up conversations with China, eventually do what Ted Cruz and others have said, use the tariffs as a tool as opposed to something to destroy the American economy?
Yeah, I think everybody would like to find a way out of this, both Europe and China and the United States. I mean, you said it. There are some good signs, and that's great if the jobs market can remain resilient. But at the same time, your companies that have to forecast, that have to plan, you're getting this, tidbits here and there. Companies are pulling their forecasts when they do their investor call, their quarterly earnings. You have companies like McDonald's, Starbucks, Pizza Hut saying they are noticing declines. People who sell kind of stuff on the lower end have noticed that there's less foot traffic coming into stores online. They're having, supply chain issues. But at the same time, as you say, China is saying that now, I think what their commerce minister said, they're open to talks. Now, he claims the U.S. is begging to chat. We're saying they're begging to chat. The answer is probably somewhere in between. So I think the good news, and I think the reason the markets are somewhat stabilized, is there is an expectation that there will be kind of an off-ramp between now and, let's say, Labor Day, and maybe even perhaps 4th of July, in which some progress is made, and thus the tariffs are either suspended or outright pulled down to give time for negotiations and for both sides to avoid immense, problems.
Congressman, do you have a story about any constituents whose personal or professional situation has been adversely affected by the tariffs?
Well, we certainly have had outreach, and I've spoken with a number of business owners in the district and outside of it, as well as obviously.
I'm just interrupting. Do you have an example of somebody specific, whether you name them or not, whose story would illustrate the way this is going?
Well, more specifically, no. I think everybody is more just worried about the uncertainty around it. Obviously, we're talking about a very short period of time since the enactment of the tariffs. So, I think there's been just a broader concern about long-term ramification more than anything else. Obviously, the ports, the imports is where people are most focused. But if you saw during Q1, imports, frankly, skyrocketed because people were preparing for the potential of tariffs. But I think, as I've said from the very beginning, this is very much a issue of short-term negotiation. And if the president is able to start rolling out trade deals with Japan, with India, with the EU, if he starts getting concessions from the EU, for instance, on things like price controls on prescription drugs or agricultural products, if he starts getting concessions from Japan on U.S. cars, that obviously is going to have a very positive effect on the economy and the stock market. And I think really that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a 30, 45, 90-day window where the president has to start rolling out these agreements. Obviously, putting a pause in place was necessary to stabilize the market and avoid any type of sustained free fall. But I think
the president's whole point from the very beginning was to use tariffs as a negotiating tool to force these other countries to the table. Sausage making is messy. And obviously, when you're trying to force change, there's going to be some backlash. There's going to be some level of uncertainty that comes along with it. But I think if you get these trade agreements in place and at least start announcing them, coupled with the reconciliation bill, the economy is going to boom. And I think what you will see, I'd say 3 months from now, 6 months from now, is a American economy that is very strong, and people are going to recognize that some of the changes that were made were necessary. And I think that's really what it boils down to. And if China, you look at China, fact is they have gotten away with a lot over the last 3 decades. And both parties have allowed it. They've allowed manufacturing to leave the United States, go to China because labor costs were cheaper, because production costs were cheaper. But it has been to our detriment. As Warren Buffett pointed out, having a trade deficit is fine, but having a sustained large negative trade deficit is not, because what you're doing is you're turning over US dollars to these foreign countries to then purchase land, purchase companies, purchase debt, and really have a lot of control over our economy. And that's not something we want, certainly not with China. Getting advanced manufacturing back into the United States is critical. The president has already announced over $5 trillion in economic investment. We want more. And that's really what this boils down to. It's a gamble that the president is making, but I think in the long run, it's going to work out in the way that he thinks.
All right, Congressman mentioned reconciliation. I'm going to set up where I think that stands and ask you both to comment. I will tell you, there's lots of things true about the two-way community. I know now that many of you are frustrated audio engineers because I heard from about 50 people. Congressman, your audio was off for about 20 seconds. Not silent, but it was a little hard to hear you. And we were just flooded with people saying, fix the congressman's audio. I think we're fine now, but thank you all for telling us the audio is a little bit low for about 2 seconds. No, it's all right. All right. Reconciliation, boring to some people. Make it more boring for people who are rich enough and fortunate enough not to be on Medicaid. But Medicaid is at the center of the Republican challenge to pass reconciliation. You need to focus on it for the substance of the politics, everybody. So let me tell you a few things that are going on. First of all, 110. Politico is on this, and Congressman and his colleagues and leadership in the White House are struggling to say, how are we going to end up on Medicare? This is actually not from Politico. It's from something called Politico Pro. Not familiar with that, but Politico Pro. GOPI's Medicaid work requirements for every state. The work requirements have gotten support from moderates and blue states who oppose deeper cuts to Medicaid. So limiting the spending by saying if you're not working, you're not going to get Medicaid. Not clear how popular that would be with Congress or with voters or how much money it would save, but that's something that's being discussed. On the political side, 109, 4 House members are being targeted now, announced this morning in a Washington Post item, by the DNC with town halls in their districts, digital ads, texts and calls, and other media meant to be shared by voters themselves in partnership with the DCCC. They're targeting, let's see, a guy named Brian Fitzpatrick, Don Bacon, Tom Barrett, and then apparently one of the 4 targets is our guest host today, Mike Lawler. Finally, as there's lots of conversations between more moderate House Republicans, particularly who represent districts that might have voted for Kamala Harris or purple districts, 107, there's apparently a group of Congress persons who are Republican, led by David Vallado, from California, whose district, according to Playbook, is home to the most Medicaid recipients of any Republican in the country. And they say he's on a text chain with an active text chat running throughout the day with a dozen or so lawmakers who are also concerned about cuts to Medicaid to pay for the Republican bill. First of all, Congressman Lawler, are you on this text chain?
Yes.
Yes, you are. So, what's the point?
It's not on Signal, is it? No.
Yeah.
No, it's not Signal.
What's the point? What purpose does that text chain serve?
Look, there is a whole group of us that have been very clear with leadership very clear at the White House, and by the way, the president agrees with us on this issue. We are not cutting Medicaid for eligible recipients, period. Full stop.
Not $1 and no work requirements. No work requirements.
No
Additional work requirements.
Work requirements for able-bodied adults without dependents. Frankly, is something Bill Clinton championed. It's something Democrats used to embrace.
Will that save money if it's implemented?
About $200 billion.
Okay, but what are those people supposed to do for health care?
Well, they're supposed to find a job.
Well,
I just want
to try to understand this. You say we want work requirements, but one of two things will happen: either they'll work, and you still have to pay the Medicaid, so you're not saving any money, or they won't work and you cut off their Medicaid and you save money, but then they're not getting health care, right? It's one of those two.
Yeah. Mark, at the end of the day, I think most people recognize Medicaid is a means-tested program. Yeah. And if people are in need of Medicaid, we want to provide it to them. We want to protect those in the IDD community. We want to protect our seniors. We want to protect children. We want to protect single mothers. But if you are milking the system, if you are scamming the system, if you are refusing to work, which is we do have a significant population there that is choosing not to work, and some of that is post-COVID. We saw the impact that had on the workforce. We saw the impact of people choosing not to go back into the workforce. The bottom line here is we want to make sure that the system is protected. It is a massive system across the entirety of the federal government and in our states. And states like New York, for instance, are spending 83% more on Medicaid than the average of the other 49 states. And so what I've said I'm open to is a few things. Number one, eligibility verification. Making sure that people are actually eligible to receive Medicaid benefits. Joe Biden expanded that.
I'm sorry, just stop you on that one. Is that to save money or just to make the system fair?
Well, it's to make sure that somebody who is not eligible is not remaining on the system for an entire year.
But you're not positing that as a way to save. But you're not positing that as a way to save significant money. You're positing that because the system shouldn't reward people who aren't doing the right thing.
No, you are actually, again, there are people on the system that should not actually be receiving benefits. Okay, so when you have what Joe Biden did was expand out the eligibility verification to an annual basis. And as a result, you had people who were not eligible collecting benefits for an entire year. All right, it is costing the system hundreds of billions of dollars. So eligibility verification, speeding up that time frame to require verification to make sure that people are not staying on the system longer than they are entitled to. Everybody should support that. Why would you want somebody taking funds away from those who actually need it when they're not actually eligible for the system? So eligibility verification is one. Two is citizenship verification for illegal immigrants. In New York, they're spending $1.2 billion on illegal immigrants to get Medicaid benefits. That's wrong. And I think across the country, Americans would agree that is not a good use of taxpayer money. So citizenship verification for illegal immigrants is something that I think there's broad consensus within the conference. And then work requirements. We want people who need these vital programs to be able to have access to them. But if you have people who are refusing to work that could easily get a job, with health care benefits, say, they should do so. If you're choosing not to, if you're refusing to go work, and you are able-bodied and you don't have dependent children, that is not fair to others across this country, and it's certainly not fair to those who rely on this critical program. The challenge we have, Mark, over the next decade, we're going to spend $86 trillion in federal spending across the entirety of the federal government. And we're talking about potentially $1.5 trillion in savings over that 10-year period. That is 1.7% of total federal spending. That's what we're talking about. The question to me is not the 880 out of E&C. The question is 218. What can you build consensus on to get to 218? I've been very clear. I do not support changing FMAP. I do not support lowering the federal share of Medicaid from 50% to 45%. I don't support per capita caps. I don't support block grants. I don't support dish cuts. I don't support work requirements on the disabled. These are the things where I've been very clear with leadership and the White House that I absolutely will not support, period.
Dan, you've not been accidentally added to that text chain, so you don't have the same visibility into this.
There's no press on this text chain.
But at least not that you know. Dan, if the congressman gets his way on Medicaid, I don't see how they could possibly make real cuts in the overall deficit.
Yeah, I don't see. I mean, that if you add up what he just said, it doesn't get near the 800 billion that they're trying to target out of energy and commerce to meet the goal. And remember, the fight was just 1.5 trillion. Then they kind of moved the bar down to 1 trillion, which became aspirational. Now, 200 billion is pretty short of 800 billion. We keep saying it. Like, they kept punting and saying, like, we'll deal with it later. We'll deal with it later. Let's just get closer to the goal line. Like, they're inside the red zone now. And now you have to write the text. There are staff sitting there literally writing text. You circulate it. And this is where members start saying, wait a second, like, I am not okay with this. And as Democrats, like, we will have a field day as long as these divisions are so out in the open, because the only way you get to what the Freedom Caucus wants, and others even in the Senate, is to ultimately get people off of this, to make real cuts to real services. It's the only way that you can achieve the 800 billion. So, people like Congressman Lawler representing their district, they're making the fight. And there are people on the other end. I think our party's way more unified than their party, and you always want to be in a fight with the unified party.
All right, two more topics about 2028. Then we're going to get to your questions. So please, if you want to be in on the conversation and you're here on the two-way platform, raise your hand.
Oh, let's stay to Medicaid.
One thing my colleagues in the media do drives me crazy. They don't understand how to listen to people talking about whether they're going to run for president. They just don't understand it. Like, if somebody says, I'm not running, it means they're currently not running. It doesn't mean they will not run. Okay. So here's Wes Moore, George Clooney's candidate, on The View yesterday, interpreted by some as a Sherman-esque statement. He will not be a candidate in 2028. Wes Moore, please.
But you've emerged as a promising new face of the Democratic Party and a possible contender for 2028. So even George Clooney has said, I wish he would talk about me that way. He said, you're a proper leader and, quote, someone we could all join in behind. I believe that's true. I think that means you have to run. Are you going to run?
I am not running.
You're not?
I'm not running.
It's saying that. You're saying that for sure?
I'm not running.
I'm not running. Okay, so then Politico has a story today, 105. He's not running, they say, but he's going to South Carolina to do a key Democratic dinner. He's paying homage to Jim Clyburn. Okay, so I don't know if Wes Moore's going to run or not, but no one should take what he said on The View to mean he's ruling out running. And in fact, it's possible to go even further than Wes Moore did and still run. I give you one of my favorite clips of all time from 2006, 106, please.
I will serve out my full 6-year term. Tim, if you get asked enough, sooner or later you get weary and you start looking for new ways of saying things. But my thinking has not changed.
But so you will not run for president or vice president in 2008?
I will not.
Senator, thank you very much for your candor and for joining us and sharing your views.
Had a great time, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you for your candor. So candid that I wrote a book in 2007 called The Undecided Voter's Guide to the Next President. And I profiled all the people who I thought might run. Didn't include Barack Obama because I took him at his word, as did the great Tim Russert. So, Congressman, if you were a political strategist, which you used to be not that long ago, and Wes Moore was your client, and he said, I'm getting all this after The View. He calls you, he says, Mike, people are saying I can't run now, that I've been Sherman-esque. What would you say to your client? And he says, Mike, can I still run in 2028? What would you say?
Yes, of course you can still run. Circumstances change. I mean, look, back in 2022, I had announced re-election to the state assembly in New York, and then New York's maps got thrown out, redrawn, And the day the map came out, I was sitting on the floor of the state assembly. I took one look at the map and said, I guess I'm running for Congress.
Right. Things change.
I mean,
things change.
Things change.
Yeah.
So, you know, this Sherman-esque statement, obviously, you know, I would tend to say, you know, especially if you are thinking about it, don't make the Sherman-esque statement just because it kind of makes you look
unless
foolish.
you're sprinkled with fairy dust like Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton, when he ran for re-election in it would have been 90, in a debate said, I absolutely won't run. And then he went on a listening tour, famous in the congressman's district of listening tours, to all over Arkansas. And it turned out the people of Arkansas thought it would be better for him, for the people of Arkansas, to be in the White House. Dan, can Westmore still run, or has he boxed himself out?
No, of course. I mean, it was present tense, not future tense. And I think Barack Obama actually set the best example when it was in, I think it was October of 2006, when he said, as the congressman just did, circumstances have changed. People have approached me. Tim, I am now thinking of running for president. He disarmed him by being honest, right? He just outright said things are different, and now I'm thinking about it. Look, they're media gotcha questions, right? Like, everyone loves it. Whatever, you're going to put out something on social media that they change their mind. They're a flip-flopper. Like, I mean,
voters don't care. Voters
no,
don't
and
care.
I mean, look at Donald Trump. He flip-flops in the same press interview on subject.
Now, last thing, sorry, go ahead. I
was going to say, look, he is a flavor of the month. No one goes to South Carolina. I mean, some people go down there for spring break right now, but sitting governors don't go down there, you know, just for fun and go to Jim Clyburn's fish fry. For those who don't know, Jim Clyburn saved Joe Biden's butt in 2020. If not for that endorsement, Biden had gotten his clock cleaned in Iowa, New Hampshire. He was basically a dead duck. Jim Clyburn is the king of the South Carolina Democratic machine. Nobody goes to the fish fry just for the fish.
Yeah. All right. Lastly, I interviewed Gavin Newsom yesterday on my new show, Next Up. I wanted to dispel 4 myths that I believe exist about Gavin Newsom. The governor was nice enough to agree that all 4 are myths. One of them is Ted Cruz said on my first episode that Gavin Newsom was incandescently ambitious. Everybody I know is like, he's definitely running. He's going to run in 28. It's signed, sealed, delivered. It's totally happening. It's not, guys. I'm telling you, he may not run. And a lot of it involves personal ambivalence. And I'm going to show you a clip from a portion of the exchange where he talks about his daughter, his oldest daughter, and how she feels now that she's got to travel with security, teenage girl traveling with security because of the nature of our politics now. Please roll number 111.
Oh my gosh, I had my oldest daughter last night. She's 15, almost in tears because she can't take it anymore, because she's got someone now with her because of the world we're living in. Ted was talking about that on your show a couple days ago. Things have radically changed. She said, Dad, I can't take it anymore. When are you done with this? Give us our life back. No, it's very intense and emotional. And by the way, for Ted Cruz, his daughter was treated badly by folks, and we needed to call that out. It's terrible what's going on both sides of the aisle in this as it relates to families and these relationships.
So, Dan, you got a guy who's saying his daughter's practically in tears, counting down the days till his gubernatorial time is over. As a dad, I look at that dad and say, I don't think that guy's going to run. I don't think that guy's going to put his daughter and the rest of his family through not just the campaign, but what if they win? Then she's got Secret Service in her life for 4 years minimum. Dan.
I mean, I will just say the finger wagging looked very much like Bill Clinton when he just did that from a mannerism standpoint. Look, I think, Mark, I'll take him at his word that he is still thinking about it and he's undecided. And there's obviously the family dynamic. You later on in the interview, he said his wife is, kind of lukewarm on the idea, or you posited it and he didn't disagree. That said, the number of things he's doing to be in the national conversation, to make news, to try to reorient the party.
Because he might run.
Because he might run for president. And they're very, very forward foot. And he is not dispelling the, idea that he's thinking about running. So look, every politician I know, if they had the opportunity to be president, they would take it. Now, the question is, do you want to go through the gauntlet? He has never given an indication in the last couple of years, as he's inched closer to this, of I don't want to do it. So
I disagree with that. He has given an indication. Congressman, your kids aren't old enough so they can have to worry about such things. But as a dad, when you look at that, doesn't that make you feel, as I do, that people who think he's definitely running are just wrong, or no?
Yeah, look, these are deeply personal decisions. Yes, I would agree with Dan. Every politician of a certain level in government, certainly, if given the opportunity, would love to be president or governor. But the fact is, they're deeply personal decisions, and family considerations really do impact you. And I can tell you, I have a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old, and the amount of time I'm away from home, it's a strain on you. And when your daughter calls you up to say, "Where are you? Why aren't you home?" Or has concern about why are the police driving past our house? Because I have that on a daily basis to, be given what goes on. That stuff does weigh on you. So I take him at face value on that. I don't think that's a show in any way. I think it's a serious aspect of making that deeply personal decision. And look, we saw what Donald Trump went through to win a second term. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that in American history, where the leading president for candidate, a leading candidate for president gets indicted, convicted, civil cases against him, assassination attempt. You see the strain that was, and I'm not suggesting anybody else is going to go through something like that, but it's a strain, and when you have family considerations and children involved, not so easy.
All right. Last thing we're going to do, winners, losers, and what to look for. So if you want to get in the conversation with the congressman and Dan, raise your hand. Dan, winner of the week.
Susie Wiles. She continues to run a good operation, and when something needs to get done, she finds a way to get it done.
Congressman, winner of the week.
Marco Rubio picked up another hat.
Yeah. All right. That's a good one. My winner of the week, this would be 103. Some of the most talented people in America in the last 100 years have been headline writers for the New York Post. Truly, they're geniuses. And this one, when the president cavalierly said that kids could pay more for Barbies and have fewer doll options, skimp on the Barbie. Skimp on the Barbie. Brilliant. Congratulations. The front of the New York Post called The Wood, one of the best woods we've seen in a while.
Keith Poole is the executive editor of the Post, and he does a terrific job. The whole team there. I told him just a few weeks ago, my favorite job in politics would be to be the headline writer of the New York Post.
Yeah, skimp on the Barbie. Very good. Dan, loser of the week.
Well, I won't go the obvious one with Tim Walz. I'm going to say Hakeem Jeffries, because for those who haven't seen, Ashley Etienne, who used to be Nancy Pelosi's communications director, gave an interview to Politico and was pretty scathing and said out loud what few people go on the record to say, that Jeffries is extremely cautious, too cautious, has trouble making up his mind, and basically is, impotent taking the fight to Donald Trump. And at least by DC inside the Beltway standards, that is frequently done on background or off the record. To put your name to it, that to me, not a good Friday for Hakeem Jeffries.
Yeah, Congressman, loser of the week.
Well, to that end, you can be assured that didn't happen without Nancy Pelosi's sign off. She is savage. Yep. Look, loser of the week is his Brooklyn compatriot, Chuck Schumer. I mean, this guy, after 50 years, go home. It is time. It is time. He's been in office for 50 years. 1974, he got elected. He's never held a job outside of elected office. He goes and does a press conference trashing Donald Trump about polling and Donald Trump's poll numbers for his first 100 days. And to his credit, Manu Raju goes, sir, a new poll is out with you at 17% approval. Oh, polls come and go. They don't matter. After doing a press conference about Donald Trump's polls. I mean, it's time for Schumer to go. He's cooked.
All right.
He also, by the way, started the week. His big offensive move was to put out a letter.
Strongly worded letter.
Yes, I don't think anything
it was
says
Dan. It was strong. It was strongly worded. Let's
yeah, but Mark, nobody.
I'm kidding.
Makes
kidding.
Yeah.
No,
Nobody makes news anymore with letters.
You said Tim Walz. You meant Mike Walz, and I'll go
sorry,
with
sorry,
Mike.
sorry.
That's all right. I'll go with Mike Walz.
Well,
But also,
Tim Walz had a
but
bad
also,
week too.
he did. But also Kamala Harris. You know,
Yeah.
like you think about Donald Trump. The Democratic Party typically shuns and casts aside their presidential nominees who don't win the White House. That's been the history of it. The fact that she gave a big speech on Wednesday, it barely got covered, and every Democrat I've talked to about it, donors and other politicians, they just don't see her as a big player in this, and they think if she ran, it would not go well for her. And I think whatever she thought she'd accomplish with that speech, I don't think she did. Yes, Congressman. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, by the way, if Mike Waltz is a loser of the week, I'd like to be Mike Waltz.
All right. Well, we'll see about it. What his confirmation's like.
Well, and by the way, Mark, it's not just Harris they want out. They want Biden gone, Harris
Yes.
gone, and Walz gone, which is
Yes.
kind of striking that
Yeah.
all three are being
Yeah.
told to like get out.
By the way,
Yeah.
Tim Walz's comment that he was picked to talk to white men, I mean, good grief.
And
Yeah,
then
was-
you advocate for DEI at Harvard.
Yeah.
That's just-
Dan, what are you looking for this weekend?
I'm looking forward to see what happens on the national security. Are there more changes here, and are there any announcements, over the weekend? Does Donald Trump make news on Meet the Press?
Congressman.
I'm looking forward to getting my SALT number from leadership.
Oh my God. My goal for the episode was to not talk about either SALT or Elise Stefanik. That was the goal, and you've ruined it. Are you really getting a number this weekend, or are you just kidding?
We should be getting a number probably by Monday, I would think.
From
Congressman-
whom? From the Ways and Means Committee? Or?
Ways and Means and leadership are supposed to come back to us. We had a meeting the other day, and I expect to hear a number from them, and we'll take it from there.
Can you screenshot the text chain and text it to me? The congressman is one of the most fervent supporters of the most misguided public policy position it's ever been held by anybody. And I appreciate his doing.
That is not.
I'll take the money. I'll take the money, but I do not understand why we're entitled to it. And I know you're going to tell me we're a donor state, but I do not get it.
Double taxation.
I understand.
Sell it, Congressman. It's big in our house.
I already tipped my hand. I'm looking forward to seeing Caitlin Clark in Iowa. It's for those of us immersed in the culture of the state, it's just going to be an incredible moment to have her come play basketball in Iowa on Sunday. So I'm looking for that. All right, now it's time for your questions. And as always, I'll unmute you. You'll tell us where you are and what's on your mind. We'll start with my friend Matt, who I happen to know is at Jazz Fest, and you can tell from that architecture. He and Nollins. Welcome in, Matt.
Greetings from the 504, guys.
Matt, did you go to bed last night, or are you?
Last night was an early night. We finished up around midnight.
All right. What's the best thing you've seen so far and best thing you've eaten so far?
Oh, the best thing I've eaten so far is the debris po' boy at Mother's, guaranteed. Best music so far. We're out at Tipitina's on, I guess that was Wednesday night, and just seeing the house ensemble band, and lo and behold, Dave Matthews showed up and did a cover of Sledgehammer.
Oof!
Wow,
that's pretty.
You got that on your phone?
I got that on my phone and made a lot of friends jealous who weren't here this year.
Yeah. Congressman, you ever been to Jazz Fest?
Not to Jazz Fest, but I have been down in New Orleans.
All right. Matt, welcome in. What's on your mind?
Hey, I just wanted to ask you guys, get thoughts on messaging. We had an F-18 fall off the hangar deck of the Truman this week as the carrier was, evading incoming fire. Feels like the Chinese are using the Houthis to test different approaches they would employ in a conflict with us. And, I remember as a kid in the 80s, everyone knew that the Soviet Union was our adversary. And it was clear whether in Afghanistan or Central America that we were, in proxy wars with the Soviets. I struggle with why the media won't be more honest that we're in a Cold War with China and give the hot war in the Red Sea with the Chinese proxy more than a passing comment. And also, why do you think the Trump team isn't coming out with better messaging that we can handle some empty shelves at Walmart now in order to decouple from China versus waiting until China blockades or potentially invades Taiwan and then holds a gun to our head not to get involved?
Great questions.
Wait, is it the Chinese backing the Houthis or the Iranians? I thought it was the Iranians that are providing unless the Chinese are providing the Iranians who are providing the Houthis.
It's both. At least my understanding is it's both.
I think what you have, as I've labeled it many times, an unholy alliance between China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea.
Yep.
China obviously engaged in the illicit oil trade with Iran, which is funding Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and other terror proxies in the region. China, of course, using economic coercion throughout the globe when it comes to seizing control of ports and waterways. There's so much happening here. I think people have to recognize China is not our friend. They are very much our adversary. They are our greatest geopolitical foe. What the president is trying to do on trade, especially with respect to China, is critical. We do not want China in control of the supply chain, especially advanced manufacturing. It's why prescription drug precursors need to get out of China. It's why semiconductors need to get out of China. It's also why Taiwan matters, and why making sure that China does not invade Taiwan or create a blockade in the Strait of Taiwan is so critical. 60% of international trade goes through the Strait of Taiwan. Obviously, in the Red Sea, you have international trade coming through. So you're correct. I mean, we need to be way more aggressive in the message and getting people to understand why this is imperative. Ending the war in Ukraine and bringing that conflict to an end is important. But it's also important in large measure because of the steps we may have to take to contain the threat from Iran, especially if they get to a nuclear weapon.
Dan,
Yeah, I mean,
call us a comment on Matt's broader question, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, I just find it so interesting. I mean, one, just Pete Hegseth and the president keep talking about, like, look at the Houthis now, like Hegseth's doing a great job. And I've said this over and over. 2 days after that attack, the Houthis kept firing rockets at us, and they're still doing it. Like, that attack did almost nothing to stop the Houthis. And look, it's interesting because Trump is negotiating or trying to negotiate a deal with the Iranians, right? The Israelis apparently were waved off from an attack. The Israelis apparently are not very happy that we are negotiating or looking at or open to these negotiations. And so you have the Iranians still funding them, and we're trying to cut a peace deal. Steve Witkoff, amazingly, has been the point person on that too. So, you hope for the best. You hope the president can get this all done. But, some of what he says about the progress they're made, the facts just don't bear it out so far.
Matt, thank you for joining, and maybe get us that video when you can, and check in with us before you go to bed tonight or tomorrow.
Mark, I will email you the Dave Matthews video.
All right, man. Thank you. Great to see you.
When I was in college, he was the man. You walked down the hallways at night in a dorm, and you heard a lot of Dave Matthews.
Yeah, Matt, thanks for checking in. Have a great weekend down there.
All right, you too, guys.
Thank you. All right, let's just
Congressman, you have a favorite band?
My favorite band is The Who.
Nice.
The Who.
Mark, you've never answered that question. Who is yours?
Favorite band?
Yeah.
Both Elvises. Mike, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Other Mike, tell us where you are and what's on your mind.
No, you're muted, Mike.
You're not muted, but we can't hear you. Can you fix that real quick? Otherwise, we'll bring somebody else in.
Tell me.
There you go.
Yep,
Hear you fine. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm in Southern Illinois. And Mark, this would be a time for you to take a bathroom break because I want to talk about salt.
I'll answer. I'll go on my text chains. You go right.
That'd be great.
Illinois.
Go
Illinois. I don't know why people in Illinois are less vocal than people in New York and California are about salt. You're a high tech state.
Oh, no. I'm on your side, Mark.
Okay, go ahead.
Because he's outside.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
but Mike, I'm warning you. Your fellow Mike, he's heard every principled argument against salt in the world, and he has got a song and dance routine that will mystify you and turn your eyes into stars. But go ahead.
I've heard it, and I've not been mystified.
All right. Go ahead.
So
try to stump the band on this.
Okay. So Dan, I've been holding on to this since before the election. Just waiting for the right moment, and I decided that this was it since Lawler's on.
Okay.
You made a comment before the election that the one way that Donald Trump could get you and your family on board for voting with him would be to eliminate the salt cap. Do you remember that?
He was kidding.
I was
No,
kidding.
I know.
Although maybe not my wife, but yes,
I think he was.
personally
I
kidding.
think he was kind of kidding. Okay,
Yeah.
so I cannot think of a more practical, laser focused tax on the people that the Democrats claim they want to pay more taxes than the elimination of the SALT deduction. Okay, I see that as massively hypocritical. Nobody locally here that my Democrat friends, most of them, can answer the question. So you're a pro. I have really come to respect you. So please go explain this to me.
This is to Dan or to the congressman?
To Dan, no, to Dan. I've got another one for Mike.
Well,
Okay.
look, when I made that statement, all politics is local, including in my own household, and we are very fortunate, right? We live in New York City. We have a lot to be thankful for. Our combined federal income tax or state tax rate, New York City and state, I think is an additional 15% on top of the 37.5%. We pay a lot of money in taxes, right? Now, look, don't cry for Argentina,
Which
right?
you
Like
voted
we
for,
are
correct?
Right. I totally hear you, but for a lot of people, it is a lot, and it was pretty jarring. If anyone had their taxes raised, significantly because something was eliminated or whatnot, it's jarring, right? And so to a lot of people in this region, this hit home, right? And so you can say, as a lot of people do, hey, we don't have a state income tax. We have lower tax rates, right? Like this is the fair market. Like you guys should cut your state and local taxes. But again, I made that comment not as a Democratic analyst, but a little tongue in cheek with our own local politics.
I totally understand that, but I also think that it does illustrate something of an attitude.
Look, I mean, politically, Mike, you're right. It is a
Okay, thank
brutal
you.
argument to go into other parts of this country. If you're going to try to win races in Pennsylvania, well, Philadelphia, maybe not, but parts of this country arguing for the SALT tax when you know who's benefiting, people, $150,000, $200,000 and up, is a tough message.
All right,
totally
I have to exercise not just my responsibility to keep the show moving, but also my distaste for this matter. Mike, ask the congressman a very quick question, and then he's going to just put stars in your eyes, and you're going to be saying, "How can I help you fight to raise the cap?" Go ahead.
Okay, so this double taxation thing that I've heard you say on this platform, and I watched part of your town hall the other night. Okay, I do not buy it. These are two different entities taxing for different purposes. The state of Illinois does not tax me to pay for defense, and there are plenty of things that the national government doesn't tax me for.
Mike, totally get it. You are getting sleepy. Your eyes are getting heavy. All right, Mike Lawler, he says it's not double taxation because New York State's not building federal roads or the Pentagon. Go.
Well, first of all, New York is a donor state. We send more money down to the federal government than we get back. States like South Carolina, for instance, I've heard Lindsey Graham rail against SALT. South Carolina gets more money from the federal government than they send in tax revenue to the federal government. Across this country, you can name different programs, you can name different issues, quote unquote subsidies, okay? And if, for instance, ethanol out in Iowa, if we want to start talking about ethanol tax credits, we can. I look at it very simply. New York, yes, high tax state. California, high tax state. Those are choices that the voters in those states make. I choose to believe we need to lower our tax burden. We need to lower our spending in New York. I have long advocated for that. But I fundamentally believe that New Yorkers should not be penalized by the federal government simply because they live in a high tax state. The SALT deduction had been in effect for over 100 years. And it was used as a to pay for other provisions of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. I would have opposed it had I been there. A number of my New York colleagues did oppose it. Where we are today is different than where we were in 2017, which is to say our majority is smaller. It is much more dependent on New York and California members. And so we have a say. and we have a seat at the table. And this is one of the single biggest issues impacting our constituents and our states. And I'm not going to apologize for fighting for it. 50% of constituents in my district used to itemize their deductions before 2017. It's now down to 18 because of the $10,000 cap on salt. So it is not just about the rich. And you are right about one thing, by the way. AOC and folks like her are opposed to lifting the cap on salt because they do believe it is a tax on the rich. And that lifting the cap is going to provide a tax break for the rich. But I can tell you, the cop and the teacher that live in my district, they are absolutely impacted by this. We live in a high tax area. My property taxes in Westchester and Rockland counties are the top 2 highest property tax counties in America. So this is not just about the rich. This is very much about the middle class and the working class. And that's why I'm fighting so hard for it. We are negotiating right now on a number. I'm not asking for unlimited because I understand there are other aspects of this that would come back. For instance, the alternative minimum tax coming back would be devastating across the country. It would impact 7 million people. So we're trying to balance all of this and come up with a number that is fair, that addresses, the concern that I have and others, while not necessarily providing unlimited to the uber wealthy.
Mike Sabaton, repeat after me. No justice.
No justice,
No peace.
no peace,
No cap on the salt deduction. Can't say that part.
and
Yeah.
elimination of the salt
Yeah.
deduction.
Yeah. All right. Mike, thank
Never.
you. Thank you. Grateful to you.
Thanks.
All right, Barry, I'm going to bring you in, but you're going to have to ask like a 1-sentence question because we're getting to time. And then we're going to get like 1-sentence answers from our 2 folks here. Go ahead, Barry. Thank you for
I'm
joining.
in Washington State, about an hour south of Seattle. So, Mark, you started the show yesterday, breaking the news about Mike Walls with 3 words: "My sources say." And that always bristles me. What does that mean? Who are they? Where do they come from? And Congressman, when you catch clips of the news and a story starts with "sources say," and you know that what they're saying is blatantly wrong, what do you do with that?
All right, so Barry, that's like a doctoral dissertation rather than a one sentence answer. I'll be really quick, and then the congressman can answer. I'll be quite honest. I have colleagues who say my sources say, and they've made it up out of whole cloth, or they're relying on people who aren't in a position to say. I don't do that. I've never done it in my career. I got one story wrong in my whole career of significance because of a miscommunication. In general, I'm a very cautious reporter. Most people would have gone on the first source I had yesterday. I waited till I had 2 others. When I say my sources say, they're people who are very familiar with the situation. It's not third hand, and they were right. So when I said it yesterday, I was right because my sources
people
are
in
right.
the government? Are they other people in the press? Or they just
They're not other people in the press. They're people who are in a position to know that Mike Waltz was going to be leaving the government or leaving that job in the government. But just real quick, because we got to go. You're absolutely right to be skeptical of lots of people who say that. I just say I'm really careful, and I've done it a long time. But you're right to be skeptical because I see people who say it, and I know it's made up, either careless or not significantly well-positioned sources, or there are people at respectable news organizations who simply make it up, and that's a very dangerous thing, and it's unfortunate. Congressman.
I would say Mark is one of the very good ones who really does work to get the story correct. And the press plays a critical role, but they have to take that role very seriously. And I think obviously over the last decade, we've seen a lot of reporters not take that job seriously and allow their own personal political views to impact their judgment and their ability to do their jobs effectively. And social media, in many respects, has been a death nail for journalism because they want to break the story first, even if they're wrong, completely wrong. And so, as an elected, sometimes it's extremely frustrating because they don't seek to verify, or they want to get the story and they'll give you 5 minutes to respond to it, and they're like, "Oh, it's going to print," and it's wrong. It's just factually wrong. And I had that happen yesterday on a 9/11 health issue. And they don't care. They don't care if they get it wrong. The very good journalists, really do work to make sure that they verify with second and third sources before going to print. And I think Mark has always shown that throughout his career. Somebody who I know the president doesn't necessarily love at times, Maggie Haberman. I've known Maggie a long time. Maggie always verifies her sources. So, like, the really good reporters do the job and they do it well. Even if I disagree or don't like the story, when you know it's accurate and fair, it's hard to quibble with.
Thank you for the kind words, Congressman Barry. Thank you.
One more quick thing. Please do a special episode on caring for elderly parents, the cost, the burden, all of that. I would love that.
It's on our list along with a bunch of education stuff and other healthcare stuff and mental health. Barry, thank you. Very grateful to you. Congressman, thank you for making time. We're running a little bit over, so I want to let you go if you need to. I got to tell everybody a few logistical things, but we're very grateful to have you on. And I would imagine you're going to get multiple offers, maybe the Trey Gowdy slot on Fox or something, at least as more guest hosting. I'm not sure you're going right to a show, but do you already have like a CA agent or WME or something?
Not yet.
Okay.
We'll see. I got a few more things I want to do first. We'll see what happens.
There's always the Trey Gowdy rat. There's the Matt Gaetz rat. There's a lot of templates. Former House Republican members are.
Don't compare me to Matt Gaetz. That's an insulting way to end the show.
Just go with Trey Gowdy then. Congressman, really do appreciate you making time. I hope you'll come. Hope you'll come back.
Job.
Thank you.
Dan.
Grateful to you. All right. So a couple things tonight on two-way tonight. Lori's going to remind me who's on.
Amber Duke.
Amber Duke, thank you. Amber Duke is on, and others, but Amber Duke will be here. We'll talk about news of the day. So that's 6 o'clock Eastern time, regular time. Please tune in. Earlier than that, today I'm on with Megyn Kelly, who I'm very grateful to her and her colleagues. Launched the podcast on the Megyn Kelly Network this week. You can listen to my interview with Gavin Newsom. It's posted now wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. But I'll be on with Megyn in a couple hours on her program, and she's already teased this, so I can too. She made a little comedy video that I have a tiny little cameo in that I think you're going to want to see. So tune in for that. Dan, are you on TV today, except for this?
I think I will be, just waiting for a confirmation.
Not confirmed yet. All right, so check your local listings for Dan. Thanks for the many of you who've written in response to our telling you that we're closing our Series A fundraising round. And if you want to participate in that, you can put the email up. Again, apologies, we haven't gotten back to all of you. So many of you wrote in about wanting to participate. If you do, email invest@twoway.tv. Put in the range of amount you'd be willing to invest if you like what you hear in our presentation. Again, apologize we haven't gotten back to you. There's just lots of incoming, and we're sorting through everything. So again, if you email us, if you're interested, tell us the range. Thank you for your interest. Also,
Mark,
if you
why
want
don't you tell us your range, and then if they get rid of the salt, tell us your second range.
Exactly. And then if you want to sponsor this program or another program, you're welcome to do that. Send us an email at sponsors@twoway.tv. If you're interested in reaching our community of very engaged, authentically connected folks, please send us an email, sponsors@twoway.tv. Tell us about your interest and we'll be in touch. Finally, some of you may have noticed this delightful shirt from our friends at Summit Golf Brands. More coming in terms of opportunities to purchase merch related to Two-Way. So don't email me about that yet, unless you'd like to buy 100 shirts. If you want to buy 100 shirts, email me and I'll arrange it for you. But more coming on the prospect of Two-Way merch, and Dan is as interested in anyone at this. All right. Thank you for watching. Dan, Sean, and I will be back Monday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time for this program. I'll see you later on Megyn Kelly. Dan, we'll see you later on a mystery program. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to watch Caitlin Clark on Sunday.